Beretta is the longest running manufacturer of tip-up pistols. Sure, Taurus and Girsan produce a few, but Beretta's been doing it for a whole lot longer. The Beretta tip-up series started with the Model 950. Now, these weren't the first tip-up barrel pistols ever. The Star 1909 has that distinction, and the Berettas are arguably inspired by the French La Française pistols. Now, I love these little guns, and I do have a goal to collect all of Beretta's tip-up pistols. And so far, of my collection, the Beretta 950 Minx is my all-time favorite. The Minx is the Beretta 950 in 22 short. It was named the Minx as a marketing stunt for the American market. It made it a little bit more recognizable than just Beretta 950. They also produced the Jetfire, which was a 25 ACP model. This specific model is the 950BS, and BS indicates that it comes with a manual safety and a simplified recoil spring arrangement. The original 950 was produced with a twin recoil spring arrangement. The 950B simplified the recoil spring to a simple torsion type. The BS saw the inclusion of the manual safety, which is much like a 1911 and mounted to the frame. The B and BS models are much more common than the standard 950. When they originally produced the Minx, it was referred to as the 950cc, but the CC moniker was dropped fairly quickly. The 950 series has been produced in 3 different countries: Italy, Brazil, and the United States. In Brazil, Beretta supervised production using its own tooling, which Taurus likely later acquired. After 1968, the production had to move to the United States due to the 1968 Gun Control Act, which established a point system in an attempt to prevent the importation of cheap, foreign-made guns often called Saturday Night Specials. This point system was biased against smaller guns and prohibited guns like the 950 and even the Walther PPK from import. Beretta came to an agreement with a company called Firearms International in Maryland. Later, Firearms International would become Beretta USA. The Minx you see here today is a Maryland-produced gun. The Minx is a teeny tiny little gun. It weighs 11 ounces. It's 4.5 inches long and has a barrel that's 2.4 inches long. The 950 series are single action only guns. Like any other tip-up, a lever pops up the barrel and allows you to directly load a cartridge into the chamber or to clear the chamber. There is no need to rack a slide, which is valuable for folks with weak hand strength, and generally the slide of the Minx is so small it doesn't offer much for you to grip and rip with. Now, these are direct blowback guns. The tip-up barrel kind of prevents you from having an extractor, so the blowback action simply throws the case out of the gun, and an ejector helps direct it away from the shooter most of the time. Sometimes it's going to hit you in the head. Now, tip-up guns inherently have a few issues. Namely, should you ever get a malfunction of any type, you can't just rack the slide to clear it. There's no extractor. You have to tip up the barrel and remove the round manually, then close the barrel and rack the slide. Now, the Minx has a fairly interesting magazine design. The 25 ACP model and the 22 short model share the same frame, and they use the same size magazine. So the Minx magazines integrate a feed ramp inside the magazine to help usher the shorter rounds through the longer than necessary magazine and into the chamber. This magazine holds 6 rounds of 22 short, so you're not getting a ton of ammo, even with an extra in the pipe. The Minx and the Jetfire were produced with deep concealment in mind. They are defensive guns at heart, but don't chamber fantastic calibers for defensive use. Both the 25 ACP and 22 short are known to underperform ballistically, especially from extremely short barrels. Some more recent Buffalo Bore 25 ACP loads can meet the standard threshold for penetration, but most 25 ACP ammo does not. The 22 short, first designed in 1857, doesn't meet the minimum standard and penetrates about 6.5 inches in ballistic gel. Now, 22 short is kind of interesting. It's not nearly as popular as 22 long rifle, but seemingly is more popular than 22 long. Most often when I find 22 short on store shelves, it's CB cap. So this is like a powderless cartridge that propels the round purely by the primer. They are very low power, but surprisingly, they can actually occasionally cycle the Minx. It doesn't run very reliably, and occasionally it will eject a cartridge. I've tried it a few times just for fun. It's not a reliable way to shoot the gun, so you do have to get actual real 22 short, which seems somewhat difficult to find if you're not going to order online. It's also way more expensive than 22 long rifle, but it's fun. It's actually adorable as a round if you look at it, and I'm really coming to like the 22 short. The Minx is my all-time favorite tip-up gun. Something about the BB gun-like recoil of 22 short makes this a darling to shoot. There aren't many 22 short semi-autos out there. Off the top of my head, There's the Minx and the Astra Cub, and I haven't seen an Astra Cub in years. The gun has, for all intents and purposes, no real recoil. You can shoot it with one hand and still be incredibly efficient and effective. Well, as efficient and effective as 22 short can be. The gun might bark loudly, but it's not a pit bull. It's more like a hyped up chihuahua. I do think fun factor is a valid reason to love guns, and the Mink offers a lot of fun. Since it doesn't have much recoil, I can shift my hand a little lower on the grip, which I found necessary to avoid slide bite. As I shot this thing quite a bit, I got a nice gaping wound on my hand. It's not that bad, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. It does get painful fairly quickly. With a slightly lower grip, it's completely pain-free and still easy to control. Now when you start shooting fast, most guns are going to start to rise with recoil and become a little more difficult to control. That's not really the case here. You can shoot fairly quickly and keep all of your rounds in a respectable group. And, this is where we kind of get into accuracy, right? I hate the term belly gun. I think true belly guns are rare, and people use the term to excuse their own lack of skill with a handgun. Accuracy with small guns is always kind of hard. The short sight radius kind of makes it suck, and the fact that the Minx has tiny little sights can make it a little challenging to shoot. With that said, at 7 yards, you can still create palm-sized groups pretty easily. At 25 yards, I can hit a man-sized target 6 out of 6 times. At 50 yards, I can hit that same man-sized target at least 3 out of 6 times. It's not necessarily a superbly accurate gun, but it's not a belly gun. You can shoot targets at respectable distances and still land some pretty accurate hits. The sights are a milled part of the slide. The rear sight's just a tiny little notch, and the front sight is the world's thinnest blade. They're not exactly eye-catching, but still perfectly usable. With a stress sight picture, I can drop the front sight on target and let it rip. The single-action trigger is no 1911 trigger. It's a little stiff, a little heavy, but it does have minimal take-up and breaks pretty cleanly. There is a bit of over-travel after it breaks, so just be aware. The lack of recoil means any kind of compromised grip due to the small grip isn't a big issue. The 22 short cartridge isn't going to beat you up, and it's just a ton of fun to shoot. I'm dedicated to scoring 6 out of 6 at 50 yards, and it's largely just because I love shooting this gun so much, and I feel like it's going to take me a long time to do so. Also, the dopamine rush you get when you hear ding at 50 yards with a gun this small should be noted. I own a few Beretta 21As, and they are not reliable guns. They are insufferably picky about ammo and seem to fail just because the wind's blowing the wrong way. The 25 ACP variant of the 21A is actually fairly reliable, and the Minx, I didn't expect much, but it surprised the hell out of me. It's not like Glock 19 reliable, but it's reliable enough to be enjoyable. I've experienced a handful of malfunctions. Most are failures to fire due to the nature of rimfire ammo. Rimfire primers aren't exactly the most reliable option. The only other was a few failures to eject, which create this complicated malfunction due to the tip-up barrel design. Now, when shooting this gun for this test, I shot CCI Varmint and CCI Target, along with a box of Aguila 22 short. So the Aguila is what gave me the failures to eject, but it was nothing too bad. I think I had 2 total out of that box of 50. I kind of expected the same reliability that I got with the 21A, but was surprised and happy to be wrong. The Minx is my favorite tip-up by far. Maybe if I get a 20, that would be the better one, but I doubt it. I think the Minx is always going to have that special little spot in my heart. Sure, it's not as good for self-defense as the 20X or 30X. The sights are smaller, I still get slide bite, and the 22 short doesn't really inspire confidence. But the Minx is adorable, the ammo is adorable, the lack of recoil is adorable. It's just so teeny tiny with a lack of recoil and surprising reliability. It just makes a very fun gun, and that's exactly why I love it. It's fun, and fun is a good enough reason to love a gun. Now, if you're watching this, thank you, made it this far. If you like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, I appreciate it. But if not, thanks for watching. You guys have a great night.